Russia has accused the US of funding bio and chemical weapons labs across Ukraine, and although these claims have been widely dismissed, many think this is an attempt to build a false narrative and pretext to use chemical weapons themselves. And joining me now, right here in the studio actually, to discuss this, is former Army officer and defence writer Patrick, my namesake, good name, cracking name, Patrick Benham-Crosswell. Thank you very, very much, Patrick. Now look, let's start with the basics at the start. Have they got chemical weapons in Ukraine? Have the Ukrainians been building chemical weapons funded by the US?
As far as I know, no. But then if they had, no one would have told me anyway.
Well, no.
I mean, the reality of the chemical warfare thing is there was a chemical weapons convention signed by all bar 4 countries in the world, which were, from memory, Egypt, Israel, North Korea and one of the Sudans. And everyone said they hadn't got them. That had verification. The Russians actually were verified to have no chemical weapons in 2016, which, of course, was the year before they then used some in Salisbury. So
now, brings me on neatly. It's almost like we planned it. It brings me on neatly to my next point, which is that the Russians have been complicit in using chemical weapons, as you've said there, in Salisbury. Also, obviously, they had quite a lot of practice in Syria, as far as I'm aware. Does Vladimir Putin care about using chemical weapons against civilians of Ukraine, do you think? And if he doesn't, how likely is it that he will?
It's a good question. I'm not sure I can answer directly for what Mr. Putin cares about. I mean, I'd observed that he set off on a wall that he thought he could win in a matter of days, and he's now in a hole with no option but to keep on digging. I mean, if he's been making chemical weapons, they fall down broadly into 2 types. There's persistent ones and non-persistent ones.
Talk me through them, then.
The persistent ones you put on a place where you don't want your enemy to go or to make his life difficult. Classically, you dump them on an airfield, and for 4 days they're faffing around wearing gas masks and having to do everything really slowly. Right. Non-persistent ones, typically or classically from the Cold War days, would last for half an hour to maybe 4 hours, and you dump them on somewhere where you want to attack, so they all have to put their gas masks on or die, and then if you get the timing right, you turn up, the chemical's gone away, they're all tired or dead or whatever, and you kill them. Those then split down into a variety of sorts, of which the most common and the most talked about are nerve agents. They're very unpleasant things. They're very lethal. They will kill you if you inhale them. Literally a drop the size of a pinhead, as the Skippers find out, it is enough to make you very, very ill, and indeed you'll usually die in minutes to hours.
Talk me through this now, because this is really what I wanted to dig down in. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this might seem a little bit morbid. It might seem a little bit, I don't know, gratuitous. I don't think it is. If there is a realistic possibility that Vladimir Putin is going to use chemical weapons, and it appears that there at least might be, then I think it's important for us to think about where our red lines are as a nation, as a society, as NATO. And I want you to explain to me, if that's OK, Patrick, the impact on the human body of some of these chemical weapons. It's not the persistent ones that you've said there, some of those more direct ones. What do they, just outline for me the exact types maybe, and exactly what they do to you?
OK, this is a little ghoulish, and they all kill you eventually, so, you know, it's a little about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. There are blood agents, typically hydrogen cyanide. They choke you. And that, of course, is an industrial available chemical, so you can actually have it without it appearing as a chemical weapon. Most relevant thing about that is it used to be the way that Americans killed people in gas chambers until it was found to be an unreasonable and unuseful torture. There are choking agents. These are the First World War ones, mustard gases, which blister you on the outside. They may not kill you. They might blind you if you've got a big lungful. You might then actually drown in your own fluids. And there are the nerve agents, which simply attack your central nervous system. There's a whole range of systems that start with pinpoint pupils and armour headache, and ultimately end up in a range of increasingly bad symptoms, followed by your body going into spasm and dying. What can you do about it? Well, back in the day, most armies soldiers were equipped and trained to fight in chemical warfare conditions. And I can't emphasise enough, you can learn to use a new weapon or a new rifle or a new anti-tank weapon relatively quickly. The whole surviving in a hostile chemical environment is possible, but it takes practice and practice and practice. And, of course, you've got to have the kit. My understanding of the Ukrainian army is, like everyone else, they had the kit, they were trained for it back in the Cold War days, and it was a legacy legacy threat and legacy capability. And then, as everyone signed up for the banning of chemical weapons, it disappeared down the training priorities. That, of course, cuts both ways, because that cuts for the Russians as well. Let's face it, the magnificent army has turned out to be not that well maintained. While you should be safe inside a tank if all the filters and everything else and all the seals are made, it might be that their maintenance has been less than perfect, and so it could be a bit of an own goal. What do you actually get as a battlefield benefit? Well, yes.
From using chemical weapons?
But by using a chemical weapon as the aggressor, you get the same effect as an artillery barrage, but for longer, perhaps, and more specifically. But after that, all you've really done is neutralised the enemy, killed a few people. You still got to go and invade the ground. If you want to go in to invade the ground, you want to know that your own people aren't going to get killed by the thing that you send over a way ago. And, of course, things like wind make it very difficult. So in terms of a tactical advantage or a tactical benefit, I don't really see that there is much of one.
Unless he's willing to play a longer game in that sense, unless he's willing to just eviscerate a group of people and then wait it out and then go in later.
Well, indeed. But where you do get an advantage, and I mean, many people, many talking heads like me have said, Mr. Putin hasn't got enough men in combat to win this war and hold down Ukraine. But if you're into siege warfare, then you're into the game of psychological warfare, terrorising people. Would Ukrainians be more terrorised by yet another artillery barrage? Well, they've done that. Or a gas attack? Well, it's another thing. The flip side of that is that puts, Putin already world pariah, double world pariah. What does that look like, and what does that mean?
Well, I wonder, I'd like your input on this really just finally, which is that I wonder whether or not Putin is trying to goad the West into more action, which would act as a trigger for the likes of China getting involved on his side. And then, surely, he wouldn't have a problem winning, and he wouldn't have a problem winning on a larger scale if he wanted to. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think China's playing a very long game. There's a long history of conflict between China and Russia over the Azov River and the resources and this, that and the other. And China's been very much on the sidelines on this. I suspect that they're currently delighted that Mr. Putin has invaded Ukraine, ecstatic that the Ukrainians are fighting so well and effectively destroying Mr. Putin's army for them for nothing. But, I mean, this is clearly entire speculation.
Exactly, but it's fair enough there.
I can't see that China would want to undergo the sort of sanctions that have basically just destroyed the Russian economy to a greater or lesser extent. When if they sit back, promise everything, deliver nothing, they can play both sides against the middle and come out on top.
You don't think...
Historically, they've been quite good at it.
Well, they have, actually. They've been rather good at it, actually. I mean, we've almost let them, to be fair. Just so I know I said finally, I lied to you. I'm saying very finally now, and I mean it this time, which is that do you think that China will get involved and back Russia if we give them an excuse to? Something like a no-fly zone, that could end up in shooting down a Russian jet. You don't think that China is sitting there waiting to get involved on Russia's side, by the sounds of it?
I think perhaps China sees its role as them being able to come in as a great mediator. I mean, what's China going to bring to the party? Well, it can deliver some weapons, lots of stuff, but why would it want to move weapons west when all its eyes have always been on Taiwan? I'm like you, I'm speculating, but it doesn't make any sense to me. They would surely be in a much better position coming and saying, OK, children, stop this now. We will guarantee the security of everyone. And then...
Probably be quite good PR for China as well after the last couple of years, to be fair, to be able to come in and be the great mediator after everything that's gone on. I could literally talk to you all day, and please, please, please make sure that we do this again very soon, actually. Thank you so much for coming into the studio.